To make meaningful user experience, what we need to understand is few psychological laws, and going forward, I'll talk about those laws. So let's start with the first law. That's called as the Hick's law. This law states that if you provide more information to the users, it becomes harder for them to make a decision. So the time and the effort it takes to make a decision increases with the number of options. Suppose you plan to buy a mobile and you go onto the e-commerce portal and start browsing. So if you see a lot of options, you will not be able to decide which one to buy. So here what happens is you'll go back, start comparing, seeing the features and all. So the decision becomes harder. And so this is how it's represented. It basically says the more the number of options, the time taken to respond increases. The best example could be the remote. The old remote, the classic remote that we used to have. Today also we have this when we buy from any market, any device. So these have got like a lot of buttons and it's very difficult to figure out what each button does. But on the contrary, the Apple remote, it's so simple to master. It has got like few buttons and you can do most of the activities, most of the functions. You can use this. Hick's law says that simplify experiences and reduce the options. Once we simplify the experiences, it reduces difficulty. So this is a very good example, the Instagram, the infinite scrolling Instagram. So what they have done is, though they are showing the photographs, the videos and stories, so too much of content, but what they have done is they have broken down that into different categories. As per the Hick law, what they have done is they have broken down their content into different sections, and that really helps break the clutter. So the takeaway here is find an area where you have a lot of options and try to reduce it. The other is, so if there are not a lot of options, you either reduce it or hide some of them and place it in other area, or you can categorize them into different categories. If you can't minimize that, try to put them in an easy order and make sure that the items are familiar, else it won't work. So I'll talk about the next psychology law. So this is basically talks about the cognitive load, and it says that the total amount of mental effort that is required to complete a task. So it talks about the mental effort. So if there is a very long form or there's a lot of information required in a form, that means the user has to process a lot of information, and that will result in a bad experience. So what you need to do is you need to break a lot of processing into smaller chunks. So the common causes of the cognitive load is, one is overstimulation. So that if you have a lot of information, a lot of content, a lot of design, a lot of things happening on a particular screen, it means it is too much as a cognitive load. So you need to declutter that. The other is providing too many options. So once you provide too many options, it becomes very difficult for the user. He faces a lot of challenges, difficulties in deciding which what to decide and with what to go. So try to reduce that options. The other is, if you try breaking the common UI patterns, if there is a pattern called as the progressive bar, if you try to do something different, very different from the regular experience, that's not good, and that will start increasing the cognitive load. So reduce the cognitive load to make users happy. So it's always a good idea to avoid overloading. This will help you create intuitive user experiences. So how do we reduce? So basically, we make instructions simple. We try to define our experiences in a very simpler manner. Once we do this, we'll also help avoid mistakes. The other is, we use schemes or the patterns that already exist. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just use the common patterns that everyone follows. The other is, always keep mental models when you're designing. So mental models are the expectations. When they come to use your product, they come with an expectation. Try to fulfill that expectations. So this is cognitive load. The other is confirmation bias. So basically what happens here is people look for evidence that confirms what they believe, what they think. So people tend to search and interpret and recall information that reinforces their personal belief. This basically happens in the case of research. So when you're out and researching for a product and talking to the user, you try to ask questions that confirms your belief. Here, what you should be doing is, you should be, instead of asking very leading questions, you should be asking non-leading questions. Leading question, the example of a leading question is, you talk specifically about a feature. That is not the right. You should talk about and get broader answer from the user. So like, do you have difficulty in finding a specific page you want to visit, or were you not able to find this product? How easy was it to use your app, and so on. So rather than going with a leading question, go with a non-leading questions. And also, instead of talking to like only few people and involving few people into the research process, involve multiple people so that you get different response and a diversified response from the users. Also, instead of relying just on the qualitative data, try to use quantitative data. That's the numbers, the actual number. So numbers will help you get better information. This confirmation bias should be avoided during all the phases of user experience.